Yeah. No, nothing seems to move.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
Well, we can see you.
Okay, good.
Maybe if you restart the Zoom meeting.
No.
No?
All right. So thanks for being here, everybody. This is a presentation of Jungian Online, and I have the Jungian Online page open here. So we connect clients and therapists worldwide that want to work with a Jungian analyst or a psychotherapist. We've been around since 2011, and I'm really proud of the work we're doing and the team we've got together. A lot of really good folks, as you're going to see today with Angela. So I want to read Angela's bio for you so we can get going today. So Angela obviously is a Jungian analyst. She works with adults from all walks of life, all over the world. She works with individuals dealing with issues such as anxiety, depression, life transitions, something we're all going through in one way or another right now, and regain their meaning in life in general. You guys can check out the rest of the paragraphs there. She has 2 degrees from York University in Toronto, and did study at the university, the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, and also completed her training at the WAJA Ontario Association of Jungian Analysts. And she's in Montreal, Canada, but she also works obviously via live video in English as well as Greek. So it's so great that we have so many different languages on the site as well. And I'm really looking forward to today. Angela, thank you for offering to do this for us. It's a great myth and fable to be looking at today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, water of life.
Yes. It's a very interesting and, oh, now I see myself on the bottom.
Okay, good. There we go.
It's a Grimm's fairy tale, and I hope people will enjoy it. It's a very rich tale and perhaps can talk to the crisis we are all facing at the moment at some level. And as all fairy tales are distilled wisdom, collective wisdom that doesn't have the personal elements, it has only the it's distilled from personal elements. So it is addressing the collective, and it gives us the skeleton of the collective psyche and presents the problems and how we can be helped to address similar problems in our own life, in the collective and on a personal level. We can, although the fairy tales are addressing the collective psyche, we can also draw parallels to our individual psyche. And the psychic processes are similar in an individual as well. And I guess I'll say just that. If people have questions later around that, they can ask. I suggest to people that they read Von Franz if they're interested. She is the authority, the Jungian authority in fairy tales. So we'll start with reading the tale together, and then we'll start from the beginning and go through the tale and try to decipher its meaning, both for the collective and for an individual. So is anyone interested in starting reading the tale?
Do you want me to start or somebody else?
Please.
Okay, so there'll be lots of room for everybody to get in here and have a read, and we've got it on the screen for you. So, okay, all right. So, And then if you want to come in, do we want to figure out who wants to go, or do you want to use the chat to figure out who goes after me, or we'll just figure it out? We'll figure it out. We'll improvise.
Well, when you want to stop, you can ask who would like to continue.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once upon a time, there was a king who was sick, and nobody thought he would live. His 3 sons were very saddened by this and went down into the palace garden, where they wept. There, they met an old man who asked them why they were so distressed. And they told him that their father was so sick that he would probably die and nothing seemed to help. I know of a tragedy, the old man said. It's the water of life. If he drinks it, I know of a remedy. Sorry, there's a Freudian slip. I know of a remedy. The old man said, it's the water of life. If he drinks it, he'll regain his health, but it's difficult to find. We'll find it, said the oldest, and he went to the sick king and requested permission to leave and search for the water of life, for that was the only cure for his illness. No, said the king, the danger is much too great. I'd rather die instead. But the son pleaded so long that finally the king had to give his consent. Deep down, the prince felt, if I bring him the water of life, I'll be my father's favorite and shall inherit the kingdom. Should we switch up now, or what do you think?
Sure.
Gary, excuse me. On my screen, I can only see 2/3 of the left side. I can't see the rest of the script. It's blocked by the videos of the people that are on the call.
Yeah, so go up to the top of the video window and you'll see 4 little boxes at the top of the video window. And you can turn the videos completely off on the far left, or the second you'll just have 1 person.
Okay.
And either way, that should help you. Okay, who wants to read?
I could read.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So he set out, and after he had been riding for some time, he came across a dwarf who called to him and said, "Where are you going in such haste?" "You meddling twerp," the prince said contemptuously. "That's none of your affair," and he rode on. But the little dwarf became furious and put a curse on him. Meanwhile, the prince found himself traveling through a mountain gorge, and the further he rode, the more the mountains closed together until the way became so narrow that he could not proceed. Nor could he turn his horse or get out of his saddle. He sat there as if he were in a prison. The sick king waited a long time for the prince, but he did not come back. Then the second son said, "Father, let me go and search for the water of life." And he thought to himself, "If my brother's dead, then the kingdom will fall to me." Would anybody else like to read?
Yeah, please continue if you want.
At first, the king did not want to let him go either, but finally he gave in. So the prince set out on the same road that his brother had taken and met the dwarf, who stopped him and asked where he was going in such haste. "You meddling twerp," said the prince, "that's none of your affair." And he rode off without turning around. But the dwarf put a curse on him, and he ended up in a mountain gorge, where he became trapped like his brother. Indeed, that is what happens to arrogant people. Now, when the second son also failed to return, the youngest offered to set forth and fetch the water, and eventually the king had to let him go too. When he met the dwarf and was asked where he was going in such haste, he stopped and answered, "I'm looking for the water of life because my sick father is on the brink of death." "Do you know where to find it?" "No," said the prince. "Well, since you behaved yourself in a proper manner and are not arrogant like your faithless brothers, I'll tell you how to get to the water of life. You'll find it gushing from a fountain in the courtyard of an enchanted castle, but you'll never make your way inside unless I give you an iron wand and 2 loaves of bread. You're to knock 3 times on the castle gate with the iron wand, then it will spring open. Inside are 2 lions lying on the ground. They will open their jaws, but if you throw a loaf of bread to each of them, they will be quiet. Then you must hurry and fetch some of the water of life before the clock strikes 12. Otherwise, the gate will slam shut and you will be locked in.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That was great. Anybody else want to have a turn?
I can read.
Okay.
Wonderful.
The prince thanked him, took the wand and the bread, and went on his way. When he arrived there, everything was just as the dwarf had said. After the third knock, the gate sprang open, and when he had calmed the lions with the bread, he entered the castle and went into a big, beautiful hall where he found enchanted princes sitting all around. He took the rings from their fingers and also grabbed a sword and a loaf of bread that were lying on the floor. Then he moved on to the next room where he encountered a beautiful maiden who was delighted to see him. She kissed him and said he had set her free and could have her entire kingdom as a reward. If he would return in a year's time, their wedding would be celebrated. Then she also told him where to find the fountain with the water of life, but that he had to hurry and draw the water before the clock struck 12. So he went on and finally wanted to rest a little. Once he lay down, however, he fell asleep. When he woke, the clock was striking 11:45, and he jumped up in a fright, ran to the fountain, and drew some water in a jug that happened to be lying on the ledge. Then he rushed outside, and just as he was running through the iron gate, the clock struck 12, and the gate slammed so hard it took off a piece of his heel. Nevertheless, he was happy he had found the water of life, and on the way home he passed the dwarf again. When the little man saw the sword and the bread, he said, "You've managed to obtain some valuable things. With the sword, you'll be able to defeat whole armies, and the bread will always replenish itself." But the prince did not want to return home to his father without his brothers, and so he asked, "Dear dwarf, could you tell me where my two brothers are? They went out looking for the water of life before me and never came back." Does somebody else want to read now?
I can go if you like.
Good, please.
Although you've just moved the page, I'm just trying to find where we are again.
Yes.
They're trapped in between two mountains, said the dwarf. I put them there with a magic spell because they were so arrogant. And the prince pleaded until finally the dwarf decided to release them, but not without a warning. Beware of them, he said. They have evil hearts. When he was reunited with his brothers, he was happy and told them all that had happened. How he had found the water of life and was now bringing back a cupful to their father. How he had rescued the beautiful princess and was going to marry her after a year of waiting. And how he would receive a vast kingdom after their marriage. Once his story was told, he rode on with his brothers, and they came to a country plagued by war and famine. The king's already convinced that he would soon perish because of the situation, and was so desperate. But the prince went to him and gave him the bread, which he used to feed his people and satisfy their hunger. After that, the prince also gave him the sword, which he used to defeat the enemy armies, and he was then able to live in peace and quiet. So the prince took back the loaf of bread and the sword, and the brothers rode on. However, they passed through 2 other countries plagued by famine and war, and on each occasion, the prince gave the king his bread and sword. In this way, he was able to save the 3 kingdoms. Later on, they boarded a ship and sailed across the sea. During the trip, the 2 older brothers plotted against their brother. The youngest found the water of life, and we are empty-handed. So our father will give him the kingdom that is ours by right, and our brother will deprive us of our happiness.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to continue?
I'll do it again.
Okay, good.
Overcome by a desire for revenge, they planned to put an end to their brother. They waited until he was sound asleep. Then they poured the water of life from his cup into their own and replaced it with bitter salt water. When they arrived home, the youngest brother brought the cup to the sick king and told him to drink it and he would get well. No sooner did the king drink the bitter salt water than he became sicker than ever. As he began to moan, the 2 oldest brothers came and accused the youngest of wanting to poison the king, while they, on the other hand, had brought the true water of life and handed it to their father. As soon as he drank some, he felt his sickness on the wane and became as strong, as healthy as in the days of his youth. After that, the two older brothers went to the youngest and belittled him. "Oh, we know you found the water of life," they said, "but we're the ones who received the reward for all your trouble. You should have been smarter and kept your eyes open. We took the water from you when you fell asleep at sea, and in a year's time, one of us will fetch the beautiful princess. Still, you'd better not expose us. Father will not believe you anyway, and if you breathe a single word about it, your life will be worth nothing. If you keep quiet, we'll let you live." The old king was angry at his youngest son because he believed that his son had wanted to take his life. So he summoned his ministers and ordered them to sentence his son to be shot in secret. So one day, as the prince was out hunting, suspecting no danger, one of the king's huntsmen had to accompany him. When they were all alone out in the forest, the huntsman looked so sad that the prince asked him, "Dear hunter, what's the matter?" "I can't say," answered the huntsman, "and yet I should." "Tell me," said the prince, "whatever it is, I'll forgive you." "Ah," said the huntsman, "the king has ordered me to kill you." The prince was taken aback by this news and said, "Dear huntsman, let me live. I'll give you my royal garments and you give me your common ones in exchange." "I'll gladly do that," said the huntsman. "I couldn't have shot you anyway." They exchanged clothes and the huntsman went home while the prince went deeper into the forest. After a while, 3 wagons loaded with gold and jewels arrived at the king's castle for his youngest son. They had been sent by the 3 kings who had defeated their armies with the prince's sword and who had nourished their people with his bread. The wagons were expressive of their gratitude, and when the old king saw that, he began to think, "Perhaps my son was innocent." And he said to the people of his court, "If only he were still alive. Now I regret that I ordered him to be killed." "He's still alive," said the huntsman. "He didn't have the heart to carry out your order," and he told the king what had happened. The king felt greatly relieved, and he had it proclaimed in all the surrounding kingdom that his son was free to return and back in favor with the king. Someone else?
In the meantime, the princess had decided to build a glittering gold road that would lead up to her castle. She told her guards that whoever came riding to her straight up the middle of the road would be the right man, and they should let him enter. However, whoever rode up on the side of the road would not be the right man, and they were not to let him enter. When the year of waiting was almost up, the oldest son thought he would get an early start and pass himself off as her savior. Then he would get her for his wife and the kingdom as well. So he rode forth, and when he came to the castle and saw the beautiful road, he thought, "It would be a terrible shame if he rode on it." So he turned off to the right and rode along the side. But when he got to the castle gate, the guards told him that he was not the right man and that he had better go away. Soon thereafter, the second prince set out. And when he came to the golden road and his horse set its foot down on it, he thought, "It would be a terrible shame if you damaged the road." He turned to the left and rode along the side. However, when he reached the gate, the guards told him he had better go away, for he was not the right man. When the year was completely over, the third son prepared to ride out of the forest and hoped to forget his sorrows in the company of his beloved. As he set out, he kept thinking about her and wishing he were already with her. When he arrived at the gold road, he didn't even notice it, and his horse rode right down the middle of it. Once he reached the gate, it opened, and the princess welcomed him with joy. She pronounced him her savior and the lord of the realm, and they were blissful as they celebrated their wedding. When it was over, she told him his father had sent for him and had pardoned him. So he rode home and explained to his father how his brothers had deceived him and why he had kept quiet about it. The old king wanted to punish them, but they had taken flight on a ship, sailed away, and never returned as long as they lived. The end.
Thank you, Charles and Marv.
Okay.
Fun.
So, what is the problem presented in the beginning?
The king is dying. He's sick.
Yes. And there is sadness and despair. The sons go to the garden and cry. What does the king represent?
Our culture.
Exactly. Mhm. And what else goes with that?
The hero's journey.
Yeah, that's later. But with the king, it's the dominant values in the culture, the collective attitude to life. So when the king is sick, what do you think is needed?
New life, new
Renewal.
ideas.
Yeah, renewal.
Purification.
Renewal. Yes, new life. Something, the value system needs to change.
That's where the saying comes, long live the king, long live the king.
Yes.
Replacement or a replacement for the king or a healing of the king.
Exactly.
It seems like historically from what I've read that that's what happens when the king has died and a new king is installed.
Yes, but is this the case with this tale?
No.
No. So here we are in need of renewal, of new life is needed. And this is on the collective level. What is the kink in a person's psyche?
Be the self, the archetype of the self.
Superego?
Could be related to the self, but here, sorry, I didn't hear what somebody else said.
Superego or?
Freedom?
Oh, superego?
Oh, superego. Yes, you can say that. It's that principle on authority that directs our thoughts and our actions. That is not functioning, right? And is this fairy tale referring to the development of the masculine or the feminine?
Masculine. There are no female characters at first until they meet the princess.
Yeah. How do we find, whether it's about the development of the feminine or the masculine? We look at the protagonist. He starts the journey. He's the one that has to go through different trials. Therefore, we're looking for the development of the masculine. And we have the dramatis personae are who? You said it?
Well, he finds to me, the answer is in the anima.
Oh, before we get there, what's missing here? We have 3 sons and a king. What's missing?
No queen.
Exactly, or princess. So psychologically, what's that represented by?
The patriarchy.
Yes.
Male ego.
Sorry?
Male ego.
Male ego, yes. Too much. Where is the emphasis, do you think, in this culture?
I guess it's in the rational and the masculine and the intellectual, and they're missing the feminine and the unconscious.
Exactly. The feminine is missing. And what is the function of the feminine?
Relationship.
Yes.
Nurture.
Love and nurturing.
Nurturing, yes. Relating. The masculine is about logos, the intellect, the rational. The feminine is about relating. Eros, exactly. We have logos, too much logos, and no eros in this culture. What could that look like in a culture like that?
No compassion, strict adherence to law and rules, regulations.
Yes.
A lack of empathy and compassion.
Exactly. Lack of warmth. There is coldness, and perhaps the focus is on material and no feeling.
Also, the population of the kingdom is suffering.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And less flow, so more rigidity, rigidity in order and structure, and less flow, like with water.
Exactly. Things are petrified. There is no water. There is no fluidity. Things do not flow. And we know that the king is very ill and in a crisis. And where is eros and feelings? In this tale?
Well, in the princess.
Sorry?
In the princess.
Right. And where
it's also in the younger brother.
Yes, there is eros in him. But the missing eros, where is it?
Inside the castle.
Yeah. It is in the enchanted castle. It's not in life. It's and in the nature of the feminine, whether found in a woman or in the anima of a man, is personal. Is about connecting and relating to oneself and relating to others. So here that is totally missing. And of course, when a man develops his anima, he's able to develop relationships also and connections. And what happens when the brothers go to the garden and they cry? Who comes?
An old man?
Yes, they meet an old man. What do you think he represents?
A sage.
Yes.
Wisdom of the balance of masculine and feminine and toward the end of life.
It's about wisdom. It's related to what it's a side of what Jung calls the self with capital S, the center and totality of the psyche. He's part of that. And what does he know?
The remedy.
Exactly. He knows what is needed is the water of life. But is it easy to find?
No.
No, it's a difficult journey till one gets there. Yes. What do the three sons represent in the culture? We have the king and his sons.
I know in other fairy tales of Franz, she talks about the king as the dominant consciousness, and then the sons often represent the the primary function and the secondary and the other functions. Sorry.
Yes, they are the new life, their hope, and the new masculine principle, the younger masculine principle. And when the old man asks them what is the problem, and they are able to articulate the problem, what does that sound like in real life when we are able to articulate our problem? Does that help to find a solution?
Well, it's the kind of an awakening in the sense of posing the question. The desire to pose the question is a kind of an awakening of some kind of different consciousness.
Mm-hmm. It's accepting the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first step towards finding a solution, right? In therapy, it's the same. We go to therapy when we accept that we have a problem and we need to look at it. Yes, would you like to add something?
I think it's partially about the balance and integration of the three energetic bodies too, in terms of the necessity for healing and moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. First, we have to accept that we have an issue in order to look for a solution. And what do you have any sense of what this water of life can represent? Does it remind you of anything?
Healing.
Healing, yes, absolutely. You know, water flows. So when we get to it, things, when we're stuck and nothing seems to move, we need to get things, our energy flowing again. And it reminds of a reference to Christ, as Christ is referred to as living water, that whoever drinks from the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him as a well of water, springing up into everlasting life. So this water is not ordinary water. It's not material water. It's something else. It's another substance. And what does the older son represent in relation to the protagonist? What could he be?
Greed?
Yeah, yes, he definitely. Yes, he has greed. What does he want?
Shadow?
Yes, he's the shadow.
Power, dominance, power.
Power, he is, absolutely, he's after power. Mm-hmm. He wants to bring the water of life to the Father, but that's not the only reason.
No, he wants the best of the king.
Exactly, he wants to inherit the kingdom. So he has an ulterior motive, right? His thinking is split, is divided.
But he's also conventional. I mean, normally the oldest son would inherit the kingdom with
Yes,
primogeniture, right? Yeah.
he is part of the conventional way of thinking, absolutely. So he's
very ego-driven.
Sorry?
Very ego-driven, though.
Ego-driven, very much. It's what I can get. Mm-hmm.
It's only the youngest son that's led by his heart, and the other two feel that they're still in that masculine being. They have a plan, they have a strategy, and although it says they're all sad at the beginning, like you said, they have ulterior motives. They're still wanting to get things, and yeah, the young one's the only one who's heart-led.
Mm-hmm. And the older son's reaction could be also our first reaction in a critical situation. What we go to is what is familiar to the collective values. Right, and it is an egocentric position. They want power. So how does the king react when the older son says, I will go and get the water of life?
He's reluctant at first. He doesn't want him to go. I guess he feels that he might be endangered, wants to protect him.
He says, no, the danger is far too great. I'd rather die. What does that mean psychologically?
Kind of conservatism, reactionary behavior.
Yes, absolutely.
Save what he's got.
Yeah, what is he afraid of?
Loss.
Losing a son.
Changing.
Exactly.
Inheritance.
The unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the fear. And when people are in a crisis, what do they say?
They resist.
Exactly. They resist change. They say, oh, I'd rather die. Oh, the fear of trying something new, going into the unknown is paralyzing. So there is huge resistance. Death is preferable to the uncertainty of the unknown and the new.
And maybe of being vulnerable as well. He doesn't want to be vulnerable to allow his sons to take on more of a caretaking role towards him. He wants to stay in that position of authority.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, he wants to secure his power. And what happens? What's the first trial? The older son meets the dwarf. What do you think the dwarf represents?
Something that's inferior. He's a little.
Is it really inferior, or that's
that appears to be? Yeah, appears to be inferior.
Exactly. Yeah. It appears inferior, and is it valued?
He doesn't value it, but he's missing the boat.
Yeah.
Yes. So what do you think that represents out in the culture? It's something that's looked upon as inferior. It's undermined and not valued. And in an individual, what could that be?
People who are marginalized.
Intuition.
Yes, it could be intuition, that inner whispering when we're in a crisis that maybe this is what I need to do. And
I think it's whatever we're personally lacking, whatever we've repressed and put down, that we've ignored, and it comes up as a lack, but we're going, no, that's no good. That's inferior. That's
right.
To it.
Yes, and the dwarves, Jung describes them as the guards at the threshold of the unconscious. Yes, they are jewelers, miners. They work with gold. So, what are they in touch with, psychologically speaking?
They're in the earth.
The unconscious.
In the unconscious, they are in touch with that. They know the treasures in the unconscious and they work with it. So it's that side in ourselves, that the creative, instinctual side that can help us in a crisis if we are open to it. But how does the older son respond?
Shuts it off.
Rejects the call to adventure, dismissive.
Yes, he's dismissive. And how does he react toward the dwarf?
Superior.
Yeah, he doesn't.
It was arrogant.
Arrogant.
Yeah, like you're nothing.
Exactly. How dare you? Let me go. So he's in a rush, and so is the brother. And what happens when we ignore that instinctive, creative impulse in us?
We get stuck.
We get exactly petrified, right? Between two mountains. We can't go forward. We can't go backward either. The two older sons, they trust their prejudiced ideas and of how to go on this journey, and not their instinctive, creative whisperings. And what happens? How does the dwarf, what does the dwarf do?
Curses them.
Yeah, right. When, movement is in creativity usually. In therapy, we need to connect to our creativity to move on. It's a tool, and if we ignore it, we stay there stuck. And there is again a false divided vision, based on selfishness, arrogance, and they are in a hurry. What happens when we are in a hurry?
We have little disregard for others.
Sorry?
We have little disregard for others. And we
Yes.
miss a lot of cues that are right in front of us.
Exactly.
And we get lost.
We get lost.
We get lost.
We ignore our intuition.
Yes, and we make mistakes. When we're in a hurry or tired or under pressure, that's when the shadow gets us. We need to stop and reflect. What does the shadow do with things? They don't have just one thing in mind, how to bring the water of life to their father, but also how to get hold of power, how to inherit the kingdom. So it's that divided attitude that is related to the shadow. And there is a lack of instinctual creative balance here. And that we don't usually get in the first attempt of trying to get unstuck, to find something new, to get the water of life. So, they're misdirected and they suffer. What does the protagonist represent here? What does he do when he meets the dwarf? What's different from his brothers?
He's humble. He says he doesn't know the answer.
Yes. And he stops and listens.
He's open. He's open.
He's open and he's respectful towards the dwarf. And the dwarf appreciates that. Mm-hmm. When the protagonist is an archetypal figure, he represents the healthy ego, the ideal ego of how we are to connect with the self, with our depths, psychic depths, and act out of that space rather than out of our ego, looking for power and personal interests.
I want to just break up, and if I
Sure.
may, a short story. I remember listening to a tape of Robert Moore's because he was involved in the Mankind Project, which I was in. And I remember him talking about people wanting to go see the king and lined up to see the king as the king was going. But he said what they really wanted is they wanted to be seen, and how important it is for us to be seen. Mm-hmm. And I see people and recognize people in my life because I was influenced by Fritz Perls many years ago. When I meet people, there's something about them that they're trying to tell me about themselves, whether it's a piece of jewelry or a piece of clothing or their hairstyle or whatever it is. And I say it out loud. Oh, how is this? Or how did you get your name? Or whatever it is. And that's my way of relating and seeing people. And I find it to be very effective that people open up.
Of course.
The desire to be seen, I think, is equal with the dwarf as it is in all of us.
Right. And on another level, the dwarf is another side of the old man in the garden and
yes, exactly.
Another aspect of that. He carries a wisdom. And yeah, when we are seeing that and recognize it, we stop, then we relate to that side of ourselves.
Thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. And when the ego gets petrified, it becomes autonomous and moves with egocentric goals, then neurosis sets in. And we can have not only individual neurosis, but collective neurosis, or even psychosis in huge wars, where large groups of people are of a divided mind. And that have serious problems and can bring a catastrophe or disaster. Yes, would you like to add something? And how is the third son's attitude different?
He goes with an open mind. He goes with goodwill in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
His motivation is honorable. His motivation is honorable.
For help. Yes. Yeah. He's not in a hurry. He stops. So being in a hurry, perhaps this is stopping a compulsion that people in the collective are used to go by in a hurry with a divided mind here.
But he also accepts his limitation in the sense that he admits that he doesn't know, and that means he's open to something to come into his life.
Yeah, he surrenders to not knowing. That's very important.
The surrender is huge.
Absolutely, when we're stuck. Yes.
He listens.
Something else is he's present.
He is present and listens. That's very important. And then what are the gifts he receives? He receives an iron wand. And what is he supposed to do with it?
He strikes the gates to open them.
He has, to strike it 3 times. What do you make of the fact that it's an iron wand that has to be used on an iron door in order to open it?
Matching substance, you need to have the same substance.
And in our own work, this could be like working with dream images and the feelings and the material that come from the psyche in order to solve a problem of the psyche. It's a similar idea. It's like homeopathy.
Homeopathy, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
At some level, you need to get the substance that you are suffering from. You need to let it work. And here the third tries. Also, what do they symbolize? Do we get things the first time we try?
No, persistence. Persistence.
The third son comes when the other 2 have failed. And the third time there is a change. We realize that the old way doesn't work. We have to change something, and we have a change of attitude. And so that's what brings the help. And the younger son, the other doesn't have an ulterior motive. He only thinks how he can get his father well, how to find the water. And the water of life is in an enchanted castle. what do you think this is about in the psyche and in the collective? What is this motif that's common in fairy tales?
Is it an idealized world, something we all aspire to or hope to be in or hope to find?
That's one side, but it's also...
I would say it's the unconscious. The unconscious.
Yes, absolutely. It is certainly in the unconscious, but it's something that's not in life. And the enchantment means?
It's magical, it's important. We can't really enjoy anything unless we have an unconscious attachment to it somehow.
It's the connection to kind of an endless source of creation. The fountain is gushing. So
the water of life, yes, is there. Mm-hmm. Yes. It's in the unconscious. Mm-hmm. But the enchantment, what does it mean? He finds the princess petrified there.
Trapped?
Sorry?
Trapped?
Yes, they are trapped.
Available. It's a fortress.
Mm-hmm. It's a frozen, a cut off area from the unconscious. It's that lives from the conscious, it lives in the unconscious. And it needs someone to bring it into life, to make it visible in order to reconnect and get, the treasures that are there. And what about the two lions? He has to go and meet, if he can enter. What do they stand for? What do you think?
Well, the unconscious can be dangerous, right? There are dangers there. If you approach it properly, it will overwhelm you, it will possess you. It eats you up.
Right, they have a devouring aspect. How is that related within us? What can devour us when we go into the unknown?
The ego?
Fear. Yes, what else? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Ego?
Yes, the ego, the rigid ideas of how to enter, but fear. Fear can be paralyzing and really devouring. It's the fear of the new. And it's the instinctual, animal instinctual, rather animal instincts in us, the fear of the unknown. So what do we have to do in order to overcome that?
He was given bread. He was given something to give the lions to appease them.
Yes.
By paying attention to his guide.
We need to feed those animals so they don't devour us. We need to trick them. How do we do that in analysis, in therapy? Any ideas?
I don't think of so much of, like, for me, I don't think of tricking them so much as forming a relationship with them, of somehow accepting those elements in ourselves, and that they become our allies rather than devouring us. That's what comes up for me.
Like acknowledging them and neutralizing them.
They need to be tamed, yeah.
Yeah, we cannot really form a great relationship with them. We need to feed them. How do we feed them in analysis, you think? If a woman has a crazy animus, right? How can she break free from all the thoughts that are going and saying, you can't do that, you said the wrong thing, you shouldn't have said that? How do you work with that?
acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it, but also not engage it. Say, you're right, but let me go now.
Oh.
And we can have this discussion later.
Oh, I see.
Otherwise, if we stay there, we don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It eats us up.
I see, I see.
And the same applies when one is caught by a big complex. You know, one has to trick it to get away from it, to say, you cannot write this book. And you can say, yes, you're probably right, but let me try for now. And if it doesn't work, we'll see. If you engage it, it eats you up. It takes all your energy. And in ancient Egypt, the lions they would open a path. And in alchemy, they were the carriers of resurrection because they sleep with their eyes open, right? So they're connected with resurrection. And what does that look in analysis when something comes up for an analysand or someone in therapy, a new direction? What's the first response?
Be fear or dismissal.
Fear. We say, oh, I cannot do that. So it's what seemed impossible or very difficult is approachable now, you know. And what happens when he goes in? What does he find in this castle?
He finds wonderful things, wonderful
Yes.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Princes.
Yes, princes. And what do you make of the fact that he removes the rings from their fingers? What do the rings symbolize?
Relationships?
Yes.
An alliance?
An alliance, a bond, where a commitment. So and they are enchanted, right? They're petrified. By removing that, what do you think he's doing?
Freeing him. Freeing them. I was wondering, like, why it wasn't theft, like why there was no morality against stealing the rings. But I guess maybe because he's helping them by taking the rings off.
He is setting them free. That's one in it. And there's of wealth there. Yes.
He's kind of learning from them about forming bonds.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Learning what can happen to one when one is, you know, enchanted, petrified, ignored. And what happens next? That's who else is there?
Then he finds the princess.
He finds the princess. What does she symbolize psychologically?
Love, eros. The feeling side of things.
The anima in a man.
Passion.
Anima mundis in the world, the collective. Yes. That's where the feminine was, in the unconscious, hidden away. And the place she's in, that's where the water of life is, the fountain with the water of life. What is the role of the anima? The feminine.
To connect you to
initiate us men into our hearts.
Yes. And when we are connected to our anima, when a man gets to know his anima, then life flows. You know, when we're not connected, then that energy is locked up in greedy tendencies, as in the brothers. course. Yes, and now, but was it easy to get to the anima?
Nope.
Not at all. Many trials to go through. And finally, he can enter the enchanted castle, an area in the unconscious, make it visible, get a glimpse of it, as in a dream. We get a glimpse of what wealth is there and how we can access it and get energized and free all the locked up energy and use it to heal. And what breaking free from an inner enchantment could mean in an individual.
Oh, a whole change and blessing and blossoming of life.
Yes.
The tremendous enrichment of awakening.
Exactly. Freeing from an enslavement, something we were stuck in.
A complex?
Yes, from a complex, absolutely.
Healing and wholeness. Yeah.
Yes, finding some sense of wholeness. Absolutely.
And also bringing it to our other relationships. I think of Calder's mobile, when one part of the mobile has a different gravity, that it affects every other part of the mobile. And I think of the mobile as relationships, family, community, whatever.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the princess sets a condition to marry him and give him her kingdom. What's the condition?
Coming back in 1 year.
Uh-huh. What does that mean? What does it mean symbolically?
That you really have to want it.
You have to prove and
yourself.
to win her.
Yeah.
It's to complete another cycle.
There's one part of this that we haven't talked about that
Yes.
keeps popping into my mind. Is the gate closed on his heel?
Oh, we haven't forgotten. We're not.
Sorry, I see things in trends, and that just is like a dog pulling my pant leg.
Yeah. The final union, the final conjunctio, the final marriage cannot be done yet. It has to wait. There is more things to do. And
the heel has to heal.
That too, maybe. So what happens? He's warned by the dwarf and by the princess to get the water of life and leave before the clock strikes 12. What does he do before that?
Falls asleep.
The bed is very enticing, so he's tired and he falls asleep. What does it mean?
He goes unconscious.
Exactly, he goes unconscious. And when does that happen in an individual? He has gotten a glimpse of something magical, his energy.
Just fall back into the collective, the way of the world again, and you may have had something for a moment, but it's really hard to keep hold of that, and it's easy to slip back into old unconscious ways.
He's fallen unconscious, and sometimes when we get a sense of completeness of having achieved something, we fall asleep. He needs to we stay with what we have found, and we don't take it out to the world. That's the danger. And what time does he wake up?
Just in time.
just in time. He grabs the water, and on his way out,
snags his heel.
The door cuts a piece of his heel. What do you make of that?
Well, there's a wound there.
Yeah, he's more vulnerable. When he goes back into the world now, he's in a
There
more
is a
vulnerable
vulnerability. And it's when we work with the unconscious, you know, it requires a sacrifice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When one is in analysis,
he'll grow from the wound. Because he's been wounded. He should be stronger.
It reminds us of the wounded healer, right?
Yes.
He's wounded, but he also knows what that is like. He can bring the healing, and it reminds us of Achilles' heel.
Of course.
That his mother dipped him in the holy waters, and he cannot be killed except that hasn't gone into the water. So it's connected perhaps to a human weakness, to vulnerability, and to the sacrifice one has to make when one is working with the unconscious. And what about water? What do you associate with that? What do you think it means here? It's something definitely not of material. Yes?
Flowing life.
Yes.
Of course, purification is always part of it, but it's something eternal in it, eternality.
Right. It's something connected to something internal that's in the unconscious, that we can access it. If we go to work to find it with a single-mindedness, not from an ego space, not from an egocentric place. In therapy, where can we find that water of life, you think? In analysis, where is it? Any ideas?
I don't know if this is that, but it made me think of in alchemy and the dissolving and the idea of tears and grief in analysis and what that can break down and wash away.
Yes, it has that aspect. And also in our dreams, when we work with our dreams, the images and the feelings that surface, it is like we get energized. The analysand feels a bit energized, even though he is not clear about the meaning of a dream he worked with, but he has a feeling or a sense that there's a hidden meaning in this problem he's working on. So we can get that water of life from our psyche, from our depths, from our dreams, from the fantasies and the images. And of course, the client or the analysand leaves a bit energized, having a sense, feeling hopeful, and a few days later, the intensity starts building up again until the next session. And one has the sense, okay, waiting for something new to appear until he feels whole at some point. And what happens after? One other aspect of returning to the water of life means returning to spontaneity where things flow, as we said. Return to a natural, what's natural in us, and without forgetting what we have learned. Well, does the hero remember what he has learned? He's been worried about his brothers. What does he do next?
He helps 3 different kingdoms restore. He brings them back to life.
Yes, he meets.
So here's the 3 elements once again: the 3 brothers, the characters, the dwarf, the sage, the princess, and these
Yes.
3 elements. The 3 strikes on the iron gate. You see how the 3 elements
Yes.
keep repeating over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm. What's 3 connected to?
The Trinity? The Trinity?
Yeah, the Trinity, and also in life when we have to try things. 1, 2,
The third time is the
three,
third time's the
oh,
third time's
the
the
right,
success.
right.
Dynamic.
The dynamic of the 3, it's movement. And what happens with what has he gotten from the enchanted castle?
The sword and the bread of life.
The sword and the bread. What is the sword about? What do we do with it?
Power, dominance, power, strength.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, the sword represents, for me as an empath, the sword represents both power and discernment, but mostly discernment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely discernment. It's to separate and differentiate.
Yes.
Throw away what is useless.
Boundaries.
Yes. Yes.
What was that?
Oh, boundaries.
Yes, setting boundaries also. And what about bread?
Well, in Christ's story, the bread and the fishes, there was only a little bread and it was enough to make I don't know, there were 3 loaves, but they fed thousands of people in the story.
Right. So it's related to abundance. Mm-hmm. It also comes from wheat, and it's many seeds that have been united to one substance. It represents unity also. It feeds both the body and the soul. In Christianity, in Holy Communion, what does the bread represent?
The body of Christ.
The body of Christ.
Right. So it's moved from material to the spiritual realm.
The individuals become one in the sharing of the cup.
Of course, exactly. It's sharing and unity at the same time. It's also in the Old Testament is connected with Sophia, wisdom. She gives out bread to those seeking knowledge and wisdom. So it is connected also with wisdom and knowledge. And that's what stops the famine here. So with his sword, he is able to stop the war, and with the bread to stop the famine. When we have gone through our trials and we connect with the water of life within us, we learn to discern. And one of the things we learn, and we get a lot of energy, we find the food that feeds and nourishes our hunger. And here, what do you think the 3 kingdoms represent who are at war?
I don't know. The word psyche comes to my mind. I don't know.
Yes. It is in the psyche for sure. All this is happening in the collective unconscious. What's war?
Clashing values. Each kingdom has a different set of values, and they're at war with each other, the different values.
Yeah, so there is a conflict, right? And what could it represent symbolically if we are in war within us, in conflict, and it sounds like it's been going on forever.
It's generational.
Could be generational.
The components of the psyche, components of the psyche, need to be balanced.
Mm-hmm. But are in conflict. Some areas in the psyche are in conflict, and it's, you know, useless energy. Energy is engaged in useless, endless activity here. That's the condition. It sounds like a chronic condition. It could be generational, as one of you said. It could, and an individual, one can be in conflict within for a very long time until through working, he learns to discern what needs to be cut away and stopped. Here it's not about having discussions, you know, how to stop the war. That doesn't stop the war. It's about ending it. Then you have peace. And we have situations where that's what discernment is about, that we learn where to engage our energy and not Yes?
I'm struck by his generosity. It wasn't his kingdoms. It's almost like the work that he's doing in the world.
Yeah.
It was kingdoms that he came up upon. And then he didn't do the fighting himself. He gave the sword and the bread to the kings of those realms. He left them. So it's somehow about generosity and somehow working at a distance.
Giving a tool, right, that he has access to. And then that ends the conflict. It's also, you know, it's a state of mind within us when we are engaged in useless thoughts, recurring thoughts, and we can't find a resolution. And there is an outside interference that's needed to some side event needs to stop it. So the younger son brings the bread that perhaps represents some kind of spiritual food, and a new attitude. He is generous. He is not egocentric. He's not divided. He is bringing what he has learned along the journey. And he has had dedication. He followed what he needed to. And when he
back to the myth of the hero's journey again and again.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I've been listening to the Hero
Campbell.
The last week because I'd had it, Ralph Bloom's original version, and the cassette broke, so I bought the 15-hour CD. I didn't know it was 15 hours. I'm probably about halfway through it, but how it's repetitive in every culture. It's embedded in the psyche of all human beings.
Right.
Absolutely. This is what Jung calls the archetypal.
Yeah.
What's common in all humanity.
The story, in a way, represents that. And I'm really, I have to tell you, I'm so glad, Angela, with this difficult time right now that we're all going through worldwide, that this is so powerful and effective that you're doing this now. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you feel that way. You know, this crisis hadn't started when I chose to work with this tale. So it's a gift from my unconscious. Yes. And it's wonderful. You have all these cassettes now, lots of material to work with, and as you are stuck at home, like most of us. Yeah. That's wonderful. What happens when he meets the brothers? What is that about?
Says the truth.
Sorry, I missed what you said.
He says the truth.
Oh yes, he says the truth. Yeah, what he has discovered. And what does that mean? What does that represent, this meeting with the brothers who have a different attitude than he?
Is it the attitudes of the collective that are kind of clashing against this? We don't want to hear, well, not we don't want to hear it, but it aggravates them.
The old and the new, right, are meeting. And what do you think is the problem here? What hasn't he learned? He has been warned by the dwarf that his brothers are of evil heart.
Ingenuity. Ingenuity.
He wasn't conscious again.
The youngest son. He is not. He's an ingenuity. I mean, he says the truth, although he was told that they had a bad heart.
So
be wise, because it was the dwarf that told him so.
Yes.
Beware.
So what doesn't he see, and what does he suffer from?
He doesn't see the bad in others.
Right. What is that? What does that mean in an individual when we...
Naivete?
Exactly, naivete, blind trust, although we have the truth in front of us, you know, an inner wise voice, our instincts are telling us, be aware, yet when we are naive, we do share what we have found. And also it could be about protecting what we have found until we can bring it to the world.
I think whoever said in ingenue is that he's got the boon, he's got the prize, the gift, and yet there's a part of him that has not. He's the youngest son, and so maybe he's still carrying that youthful naivete. Even though he's had these experiences, and he hasn't learned to set good boundaries.
Yes.
And I think that takes experience.
Of course. We all learn our lessons by making our mistakes, right?
Instead of our successes, for sure.
even in analysis, you know, we learn to keep our vessel closed, as we say, while the material inside is cooking and working. And the moment we share it, we lose some of the energy that needs to stay with us. So there is a naivete that leads to another journey. And it's meeting the old and the new, you know, and there's this impulse to preserve the old order of things, the old values, that the great resistance to the new. We see it in this clash here. And yes?
It's very interesting because I'd always thought about the hero journey as leaving the mundane world, going into the unconscious, having trials, and bringing the boon back to the everyday world again. But I never thought before about how there's almost like another set of trials once you get back into the world. It's not diagrammed as, you know, in the hero journey. It's very interesting.
it's not smooth sailing, right? It's not an ideal world. We need to mature and grow and learn how to share what we've learned and when to do it. And we make mistakes and we learn.
And you have to believe in yourself.
Yes, yes. And the clashes between the new and the egocentric old way of doing things. And what happens when they are in the ship sailing to go home?
He falls asleep.
He falls asleep again. So this motif, falling unconscious. And what happens when we fall unconscious?
We can be
vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we set.
Yes.
The things that we set boundaries against come back in.
Boundaries, and we lose what we can be betrayed. That's when we betray ourselves, perhaps, you know. They switch the water of life to salt water.
Bitter salt water.
Yeah, sea water. So what happens? How does the water get to the king?
They steal it.
Yeah, they steal it. It's taken away from him. And what does he give? He thinks he doesn't realize it.
Right.
And
he gives the salt water to his father and makes him sicker.
Right. And the king thinks his son wants to kill him. What could that mean in the collective? When something new comes in, is the collective ready to receive it? How can he receive? The collective receive something new, you know?
With suspicion.
Yeah, and the water tastes bitter, right, at first. And true and false is confusing here. Who the genuine is taken for the false one. And the renewal happens. You know, the older brothers give the water of life. The king gets well. Does he know, though, the true source?
No.
He doesn't.
No.
Yeah. And what is that in the brothers that want to take possession of something that they haven't really found?
They don't want to face themselves. They're in their inner world.
Yes, but they want the benefits, right, of something that somebody else has found. It's like taking possession of life itself rather than looking at it as a gift and appreciating it. It's that, perhaps that kind of attitude. And what happens to the younger son?
Well, he then becomes an outcast and hunted down. I mean, according to the king's decree, yes.
Yes. And who is he given to?
The huntsman?
Yes.
Yes.
What does a huntsman do?
The huntsman's very honorable. He couldn't really kill him. He couldn't really follow that order, and I'm not sure exactly why, but he just couldn't. You know, he said he couldn't.
Yeah.
And they switch clothes.
Mm-hmm.
He saves the young prince.
Yes. what does a huntsman do? He goes out in the forest.
It's like Snow White, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's envy too. It's the envy, not being grateful for the gift.
Yes. All of that, absolutely.
The huntsman reminds me of is like sort of the conscious counterpart of the lions, because the lions were kind of needed to be tamed, and he had to kind of trick them. And the huntsman was going to kill him, even though the huntsman was open to not killing him. He still had to, kind of come up with a creative solution.
In a way, but it's not wild, right? A huntsman is human. He's not an animal, doesn't represent an animal instinct. And the huntsman knows the forest, right? The world of the unconscious and the animals, the wild animals. So he's in touch with instincts, and his instincts are right here. Something in him doesn't let him kill the prince. And what does the prince ask for?
Trade places?
Sorry?
I thought he asked him to trade places with him.
Absolutely, yeah. He wears the huntsman's clothes. What could that be? How does he have to be in this period? Can he be?
It can't be himself. He has to be. He has to hide and disguise himself. Can't show his true self.
He has to join the ordinary condition after being human, having been betrayed.
Oh, yes.
And yes,
he can't be naive if he's a huntsman.
Right. You cannot survive. You have to learn.
Defend it.
Exactly. You have to learn to protect yourself, something he was too naive to do when he met the brothers. So, and where does he go?
To the forest?
In the forest. What is that symbolically? What does it stand for? Psychologically?
The unconscious.
The unconscious.
The unconscious again.
Yeah, the new values that he represents cannot stay in the collective. They recede into the unconscious. And he has to complete a year until he can meet the princess. What happens to the brothers again?
Well, they're discovered, and then they have to leave. They're exiled from the kingdom.
Oh, before we get there, what happens to the king? They disguise themselves. They disguise themselves again. The shadow.
The treasures arrive.
Yes.
The thankfulness.
What happens to the king?
He regrets.
He regrets. And what do you think happens inside him? Until then, he
was vindictive and against his third son, and then he realizes his mistake.
Yeah.
He didn't know the whole truth.
Yes. He probably had a doubt. He also, like the older sons, had a divided mind. And to have a divided mind means to suffer. We are not one with ourselves. We suffer when we're divided. He had his doubts, and when all these loads of gold, the 3 wagons of gold arrive for his son, then what happens? He has regrets. And in another translation of this fairy tale, when he hears that the huntsman didn't kill him, he's relieved. In another translation, it says, a heavy rock fell from his heart. What could that mean?
Guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yes, guilt.
Openness to new ways.
Now his heart
Is open.
a change of heart. There is a
Yes.
change of heart in the king. This is when the real change in the king happens. And then the son comes and he knows the whole story, the truth. Mm-hmm.
I think it's like when in therapy, you
Yes.
acknowledge that you really change, that you're not, that you acknowledge your new parts, and you know that you really change because it shows in your life. And for some
Yes.
time, you still doubt it. You still doubted the new, but now you know that it remains in you. You really, really change.
Now the collective is ready, if we're talking about something changing in the society at a bigger, in the collective. Now it is ready to acknowledge the wealth from that, from the new masculine, the new values. And there has to come a moment, when we really recognize the change and all the wealth that comes from different sources, from the places where the war has ended, the conflicts are over. So there is no inner conflict in this collective and in an individual too. That's when the real change takes place in the king. Mm-hmm. And then what happens when the older brother goes to get the princess? What does he do?
They take the side road, and that's because they cherish the gold and don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
Both of them, the second one too.
Both of them do that. What do you think that represents in them? Gold is the
Power.
value.
Power and not love.
Yes. What are they after when they are going to get the princess?
Wealth and a kingdom.
Exactly. They're after power. They haven't seen her. They don't love her. There's no interest in her.
But they also take a devious routes too. They don't take the direct route. They do something devious in the process.
Yes. On another level, this is different from their original stance, their original attitude when they met the dwarf. And the dwarf, they didn't stop there. They speak angrily and disrespectfully. They were quite arrogant. Where here, they feel perhaps not worthy on a gold path. So here it's like going from inflation to a negative inflation. From overestimating oneself, overvaluing to undermining.
Mm-hmm.
And they cannot get the princess, the anima, that way.
Can't it be that they cannot go through the royal way?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. What does gold represent?
For me, heart.
The golden royal road, as you said.
The opus.
The great work.
Yes, and
a virtuous path to riches, lots of things.
But to me, the gold represents the value of the inside of the development of the whole person.
Absolutely.
The whole
And
the marriage, like you said, the conjunctio.
Yes.
That's the golden road right there. That the third son rode right down the road, not even thinking of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
There's something about streets of gold. I mean, they say the streets of heaven are paved with gold, and here we have a golden road again, which is
yes, it's the royal road to wholeness and to union, to the sacred marriage, if you wish. You know, inner and outer are united.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't done the work. They cannot take that royal road that has the gold. It's when we work hard, you know, that's what the alchemists thought they would be able to make.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And projecting.
They haven't gone through the alchemical processes of Negrito and on.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Is the path for individuation? You
Exactly.
have to take it with hard work.
Absolutely. Until you can get to the gold and to the princess, to the marriage with the princess. Exactly. Mm, yeah.
But to me, that requires a significant amount of suffering.
Yes.
To let go.
Absolutely. And examine one's values, right? Yeah. Our old values and our old attitudes cannot carry us anymore. We need to review that, to examine that in analysis, or in any way one is able to get to a place where one can feel whole again, relatively whole and at peace. And that usually, is that an easy road?
No, definitely not. No. Definitely not.
And, yeah, the two brothers want to take the easy road, and it doesn't work. There is suffering along the way, and the youngest son has fulfilled all the requirements, has gone through all the trials that he was presented with, and now he, with the new insights and the wisdom he's acquired, he's ready to go and live in the place that has the water of fountain, the fountain of the water of life. Mm-hmm. Yes. And
there's a twist.
Yes.
There's a twist though. The brothers told him he needs to keep his eyes open, right? And they kept their eyes open. They noticed the golden road, whereas the youngest prince was oblivious. He was thinking about the princess and didn't notice. His eyes are still closed, but being blind, he could see better than his brothers did. It's a nice twist.
Yes. Where was his mind?
His mind was on his beloved.
Right. Which
not the outside.
Exactly. He's going there with love in his heart, not with a power, hunger, you know, to get the princess, to possess what she has. There is a very different attitude. And
he wasn't looking.
Yes?
He wasn't looking on the outside.
No.
He was maybe looking on the inside.
He was connected with how he was feeling, with his heart.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that then he meets the father, and there is a
reconciliation.
A reconciliation with the father. What happens to the brothers?
They get lost at sea. The father wants to punish them, but they've already taken off on a ship somewhere. Nobody knows. Never to be seen again.
Right. What does it mean? You know, it reminds a bit the false bride and the true bride in another fairy tale, where in the end, of course, the true bride is found out. And here, that also is the motif, the true and false one. And there is no need in the collective to address that when, you know, the genuine, the new masculine, and what he brings is incorporated or about to be integrated in the collective. There is no need to be dealt with. There is no need to deal with the brothers, with the old attitude. It sort of faces away. In other fairy tales, they get banished. And well,
the brothers represent complexes?
They could. The shadow complex, when we are caught by that, and what we don't know about ourselves. You know, we think we know ourselves, but there's another side that acts without, when we're asleep. Yeah. Any questions?
She's educated. Well, what's the source of this text? What's the title of this volume that has these stories?
Oh, it's the Grimm's fairy tales.
Oh, it's Grimm. It's one of Grimm's.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It's number 97. The water.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. A pleasure. Mm-hmm.
I'm just really thankful that you gave this talk. Thank you. I'm teaching a Jungian and Campbell and Victor Turner perspective on Grimm's fairy tales. And right now my degrees are in comparative literature, and I'm just wanting to bring it into, just like, you were talking about, bring it into what's happening with the pandemic next quarter. I'll be teaching online for the first time. And so this was just really helpful, it just helped me to feel confident that, this is absolutely something that can still be helpful for my students at this time. It's translatable to what's going on, and it can help them to process some of the feelings, and difficulties that they're going through. And, I sometimes I get uncertain about it, but it's like, I feel I feel excited for the course that's coming up. So thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
I have found your presentation very stimulating. I can use this in therapy very much. I can use it with my clients. I thank you very much for this.
Oh, my pleasure. You're a therapist.
Very, very stimulating. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And we can reflect on what's happening to us outside. There's, a contagious illness out there. So there's something. What do you think is happening? If we take the illness of the king and compare it to what is happening to us.
Right now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Right now in our culture, my opinion is that the king is ill, and all of the king's attendants are ill. And so our kingdom is suffering, our society is suffering. And I hope for a change. And also too, I've got so many books stacked up in order to read, and I've been going back and forth between Jung and Campbell's massive God volumes. And so now all of a sudden I go, oh my God, now I've got to pull out Marie Louise von Franz's fairy tales book. I was like, oh no. Thank you so much. This has been so stimulating and so exciting. I thank everyone for participating. This was, you really done a great job in bringing me alive today. This is a high point of my day. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm really happy to hear that. Yes. Any other thoughts about what's happening to us collectively?
Death and rebirth, hopefully.
Yes, yes. And what do you think would be helpful for each one of us during these difficult, challenging periods, something we've never experienced since the Second World War? We did, and our parents did.
Well, if we're taking the lessons from the princes, it's not to be like the arrogant first princes, but to be humble and to ask for help and to be aware.
Yes.
And, maybe unlike the first prince, try not to fall asleep halfway through.
It's to go within. It's a time of going inward, and it requires reflection and connecting with our depths. That's where we can find the water of life, perhaps. And for each one, I'm sure it's different. I like what Von Franz says somewhere, that a dream, and when we work with it, it's like a ladle of the water of life. That when we work with it, we get energized. And we're feeding our psyche.
I like probably many of the people on this Zoom call have been doing therapy off and on, and I've done a lot of deep inner work, and I needed it because I suffered a lot of abuse as a child. And I started working with Elizabeth Holmes, who Gary introduced me to last year. And I had seen her on a couple of calls, and I've been working with her since last June. And I have to tell you, the dream work is more powerful than anything that I've ever done. And although I'm really, suffering from pain, my spirit is like so good, so positive, that I just, it's released a lot of energy with me. And I've told some friends that are doing a lot of work with men, especially, that there's nothing more powerful than this. And I really believe that, because what's happening is I'm getting messages from my dreams that are just overwhelmingly wonderful and challenging too. And I'm grateful for that. There's a lot of positive to be said, and I think most people have no idea of what this work is about or how much it helps us become real human beings with empathy and compassion.
Of course, that's wonderful. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question for either you or anyone else who's probably more knowledgeable in the area than me here. I'm an artist, not a therapist, and some of the work I've been making recently was hooded dwarf figures, and I'd made them partly because I'd heard that line about Jung saying the dwarfs. I'd read it in his, I think it was the alchemy psychology one, about them being guardians of the unconscious. So I made these pieces recently, and then I've seen some work from Leonora Carrington of almost the identical dwarf, well, they weren't dwarfs, but these hooded figures again. And then I've had them recently come up in some dreams, and then today they've come up again, which I wasn't expecting. So it seems to be something that I should be looking into a bit. And so I wondered if you knew anywhere I could do some more reading around these dwarf characters or guardians of the unconscious, or if there's any stories or anything that anybody knows of.
They come up in other stories, but I think it would be useful for you to connect with what they represent for you.
Okay, fair enough.
There is a synchronicity
Yeah.
Okay, so
maybe like
your dreams.
or something.
Yeah. So perhaps I hope today's touching on it gave you
Yeah, definitely.
insight of what they mean, but you need to connect with them in a way that it makes sense to you and it's meaningful to you.
So like the young prince, not going for the academic approach of researching it, kind of going into the heart and there. Fair enough.
Yes, the academic has its place, but there is also the inner work that each one of us needs to do. It's a challenge for all of us to keep doing.
Thank you. Thank you for today. I really appreciated it.
Oh, my pleasure. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much for your feedback and your participation. Yeah. Anybody else has? Yes.
I thank you very much to you and Gary. And I was thinking about if you can do it again with another story.
Yes, we'll think about it and we'll try to plan it. Yes.
I would pay for this, definitely, because it's so worthwhile. I've gotten so much out of this. I would definitely pay, and I hope other people feel the same way.
That's generous of you.
The time is valuable.
Yes, but it's also a pleasure, my pleasure, to be sharing this with you today. And
it was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for participating and for your feedback.
Angela, could you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to say I'm sure we're all very thankful. I'm personally very thankful. I'm just an amateur in this, but I just remember one thing I read in one of Jung's books is that that fear or emotions paralyze people, or use that as paralyze people, but it's strong emotions make people unconscious. And I feel that right now, with all the fear that's going around, maybe people are overreacting. And what advice would you have for people, like many of my friends, that it's tough? I don't know what to say to comfort them in this time of fear.
I would say first acknowledge our feelings. That is important. And try to go within, find what strengthens you psychologically at this point.
Thanks.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. Are we at the wrap-up point here, Angela?
Well, it looks that way, unless someone has a question or a comment to make.
Hello, I have one. This is Elke.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, this particular tale was about, the characters are all male, okay, and they, towards the end they redeem the feminine. Is there a story for women? I mean, I was trying to formulate the question, but for me it's how does that apply to women in a sense? That character of the young prince.
Yes.
Are you with me? I still have
Yes, I'm listening to you. Well, it does apply to our inner masculine, to our animus.
Yes.
And we see our animus in the male figures in our dreams.
Ah, right. I was wondering, in this particular tale,
yes,
how do they represent the animus for women, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, it's working with that inner masculine, which, none of us has just one inner male image in our dreams, we have more than one figure. So there are different aspects of our animus, and we can work with that.
Okay.
In our dreams.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
We can talk about negative animus, a positive animus. One that connects us with our creativity, or one that gets us into negative thinking, which usually that's what the animus does. Yeah.
I know.
But there are it's when we're thinking of them masculine rather than the man, the actual man. We women have our inner masculine too, the way men have their inner feminine, which is called anima in Jungian psychology.
Yes, I'm with you. I understand that, because women also very often have to redeem their feminine.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And we have to work on our masculine and our shadow also.
Yes, but because we are brought up in a patriarchal, society, we very often can be cut off from the feminine too. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So I was just kind of wondering how that would, how I could sort of see that tale, how it would help me somehow to understand.
It's connect with the feminine principle within, with relating to oneself and to others and to whatever one is involved with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Connecting to our feelings. That's what the feminine feminine role is.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you. Yes, that
Does
answers.
it answer your question?
Yes, clarify certain things. So they're just left with a question, but it's kind of difficult to formulate a question.
I know. I'm getting you asked it.
And by the way, I really enjoyed the session very much. I think in these difficult times when we have to go inwards, it was just priceless. Thank you for this.
Oh,
really.
My pleasure. I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Actually,
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did, the last question made me think of something. So in our current culture, there's a lot of discussions about gender fluidity and gender identity and things. And I teach college students who are, about 18 to 21, somewhere around there. Yeah, and I've been wanting to teach Jung and Campbell and Turner for 10 years now, and I haven't allowed myself, and I finally, and that's what I learned as an undergrad, and I loved it, and I finally have let myself start, and my students really enjoy it. But I think one of the apprehensions I had was in working with discussions of the masculine and the feminine, I thought, okay, I look at these stories as an animus, or a male looking to incorporate his anima, or a female looking to incorporate her animus in these stories. But do you have any suggestions if students, it didn't end up coming up in my classes, but if a student was to kind of, bring up questions of gender fluidity and things like that, just given our current culture, do you have any suggestions? Because I don't know if I know exactly how to respond in that situation.
It's becoming, more prominent in our culture. Well, you can talk to them. They need to relate to both their masculine and feminine side. And talk about the feminine, what it's about. It's about relating really to oneself and others and what comes up. I don't think one can really address that issue in an individual. Theoretically, they should seek therapy or be referred to therapy where they can really work through that. if that they feel confused or they don't know where to go.
Definitely. Thank you. And thank you so much again for this talk. I just really got so much out of it. Thank you. It's lovely.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I just have one more question.
Yes.
I think Jung said that unacknowledged inner feelings or conflicts inside that aren't acknowledged can present itself outside as fate.
Yes,
And
when we are not conscious of them.
okay, and then what do you think? And he was always saying he's fearing maybe nuclear war because people are becoming more extroverted. And what would you say, do you think that applies to what's going on right now in the world? And what advice would you have for us all to maybe correct this or make positive changes?
Well, I think we all need to start with ourselves. Outer changes start from an individual, not from groups. And if, more of us do our work, then we can, and of course it's an individual choice. If there are groups out there and collect where you can address some of those things or work with a group, by all means, it doesn't mean you cannot. But first of all, the start is ourselves. That's what we have to work with. We have war because the conflicts within people are not addressed. We project everything into others. Everybody else has a problem except us at cases, and that can lead to violence and making the other the problem instead of seeing that within us. If we address that within us, the chances are we won't act it out and we won't project it into others.
Okay, thank you.
Does
I'm
that
trying.
answer your question?
Yes, I'm speaking with a Jungian psychologist in Armenia. There's a little bit of a language barrier, but if need be, I'll do my best to reach out with you and consult with you.
Oh, I'll be happy. I'm happy to hear from you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Is there a question?
I was just saying thank you, because it was very, very good to listen to you and to think with you. And in these times that we are all at home, I'm in Portugal, in Lisbon, so we have this situation from the emergency, national emergency, so we are all at home. And it was great to have this session with you. And for this process of stopping, stopping the hurry life that we lived every day. And now we have to be still and we have to reach to each other in another ways. So this is, I think this is going to be very, very transforming for the world.
Yes, let's hope so. It's definitely a call for huge changes, I think, that are needed in the world, not just in one particular culture right now.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit, just sort of to the question he just said. I mean, the world is sort of dominated by the older brothers, right? The world is dominated by those seeking gold and those seeking, work, money, more. And this is a pause.
Absolutely.
And this is a pause where people can start to go inward, and hopefully on the other side of this we come out with a slightly different values that values other things other than gold.
Absolutely, other than material and power. There is also eros. How can we act out of love towards ourselves and our communities, the world, the earth, There is this
more
is
balance in the feminine and the masculine worlds.
absolutely. We all live in patriarchal cultures that we do not value the feminine principle.
Well, is that the truth here in the States? Yeah.
Yes, in the Western world, because I can't speak for the Eastern, I think they are going that way too. It's definitely true. The emphasis is on material, on doing things rather than being and going within and relating.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, it's great that this worked out so well. You know, we didn't, knock wood, we didn't have any technical issues. Everybody had a great time.
Worked well. Well, I want to wish everyone to stay safe and
to
to
you
find
too.
strength from within. Find your water of life and look for that and what energizes you and grounds you. We definitely are bombarded with so much information that's scary right now that it's very important to go within and connect with our psychic depths. Sorry, somebody had a question or a comment?
I just wanted to offer one thing. 2 years ago, I cut the cable, and then I had an experience that I won't go into where I had a real awakening about my life. I'm 73 now, but I was 72 then, or 71. And I sold my luxury car. I put my house up for sale. I gave away or sold most of the really big, expensive possessions. And I got rid of about 80% of my possessions. I still want to get rid of more. And I rented a small house. I now drive like 61 or 62 miles an hour on the freeway, while the speed limit here is 65. Everyone drives 75 to 80. And I noticed, and I also stopped that last year, I stopped all news. No news, no written news, and no, once in a while I get a flash of it, but I delete a lot of it on my email. And I have like never been happier. I suffer from a pain tremendously, yet emotionally, I have never been happier. And I find that there's so much beauty in the world that I'm present so much more, and that my head isn't full of noise. I think a lot of that has to do with the work with Elizabeth, but also of my own decisions to turn off what I call the people that are saying drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. I hate to use that term, but I don't know what else, but it is. Our whole culture is consumed and based on consumerism, which is horrible. It's not based on human values. I live in Arizona here, and people are ignoring the whole kind of arts. People are congregating. People are not, they're shaking hands. They're getting together. Most people, and it's like, I'm self-quarantined now, and I'm going to reach out to some friends today to see if they can get me some groceries. But it's really, my life has really changed just to stop the media.
Yes.
And the slowing down, I know, is from my work with Elizabeth. Yet
Good for
everywhere
you.
I see beauty.
Yes, because you have you're making time to see and be present.
Yeah.
Where the news is it's about information, and we have too much information and not much insight and going within.
Right.
And this is our chance to do that.
My friends have commented about it, and I say, I can't do anything about everything that happens. I said, from being in Europe many times, I said, I want to live the life of a village, not the life of the external world, which I'm powerless to do anything about anyway.
That's right.
That was a real awakening, that I'm powerless to do anything about all that information.
Right.
Absolutely, except, overload our mind with it and have no space to think for ourselves or to reflect on things and connect with what we're feeling at the moment.
And I've also noticed with most people, like I had a friend over a couple of weeks ago that I don't know real well, but he was over here 5 hours, but he was only with me for 90 minutes. He was either in the past or in the future, one or the other. And I've noticed that from other friends that I have that haven't done the work that I've done. And I have compassion for them. I love them. But I also notice that they're frequently not present. They're just not here, and I can watch them go away. I mean, I can feel them because I'm an empath, but I can also just watch them go away, and then they come back. So that tells me a lot about our culture. Thanks for listening for me talk too much.
No, I appreciate your sharing. Yes.
Okay, guys. So time to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Angela.
My pleasure. Thank everyone for participating and sharing.
They're magical. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Gary, for
Thank
putting
you, Mark. Great to see you, my friend.
And I hope you're doing more stuff, Gary, because I really miss you.
Thank you. Miss you too, buddy.
I'm leaving.
Thank you.
Ciao.
If you want to work with Angela, anybody, go to jungianonline.com. And thank you all for being here. We're going to have more of this during our indoors time here over the next weeks and months. So pay attention. We'll be here for you doing this more. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care, all of you.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye.
Thank you.